Hello, my name is Dr. Judlika, and I'm Associate Professor of Biology at Missouri Western State University. I'm really happy to share with you this short presentation on backyard birding in Missouri winters. So what I'm going to go through is cover some of the species you can expect to see in your backyard of birds and how to identify them, and then how you might want to attract them and figure out what new birds are that you might not know. So I'm going to play around on the internet here, and I'd like to first mention that the website I'm using to discuss the birds you might see in your backyard is from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and it's a really famous lab of birds, and all of the material you will see on these websites are completely up-to-date scientifically. So if I were to just Google Downy Woodpecker, usually it's the very first site that comes up. All right, allaboutbirds.org. You go to that website and you're going to get real up-to-date information that you know is accurate and that I can trust. I tell my students the same thing. So All About Birds is a great free resource, and I can give you information on an overview of the species, how to identify it, its life history, its range maps, and its sounds. And so Downy woodpeckers are some of my favorite birds that visit my backyard. Now I live in an area that has a little bit of woods in the backyard, or behind my house really, it's not in my yard. And so the kind of habitat you have is really going to depend on what birds you have. But even if you're in St. Joseph inner city, if you have maybe a peanut feeder, which we'll get to later, you can get some really fun woodpecker species. So Downy woodpeckers are a smaller woodpecker species. They're black and white, and they have these short little bills. The males have a little red on their head, whereas the females do not. And again, you can learn more about them, listen to their song. You can see from the map, this purple color means where they are year-round. So they're not only in Missouri during the winters, but they're also found here in the summers. You can see them traveling along branches and stems of trees as well, and pecking around, making woodpecker holes, looking in the spring for good places to build a nest. Now another common woodpecker species that's much larger is the red-bellied woodpecker. And of course the first thing I notice when I stare at this bird is not that it has a red belly, but the red on top of its head. Right? The male actually has red throughout the crown and the neck, whereas the female has kind of a patch of gray where the male has red. But it's not really their belly that stands out. These aren't red-headed woodpeckers, those are a different species. But these look kind of like zebra stripes on their back and kind of have more of a white chest and belly. But here's one where you can really see maybe why it gets its name, having the reddish below. And they are one of our larger woodpeckers. They're larger than the Downy woodpecker. And again, you can find them in your backyards of Missouri. Here is the red-headed woodpecker. So they're a different species. They like more open areas, farmland, than the red-bellied woodpecker. When you go to the overview page, it'll also tell you what kind of habitat it likes. So I get them because they're probably attracted to the trees in my backyard. If you don't have trees, you might get some other species. They're eating a lot of food and insects, and like other woodpeckers, they nest in cavities. Now, no matter where you live, you probably are familiar with and have seen blue jays. So they're a rather large bird, kind of the same size as a red-bellied woodpecker, but they're not a woodpecker, so they're not going to be seen crawling up the stem. Instead, you see them in flight a lot with these large kind of white feathers on the outside of their tail. They have a ring or collar around their neck, and then when they're seated, they'll oftentimes have their crest up. These are blue jays. They make loud noises that you've probably been familiar with. So again, if you want to go to the All About Birds, you can go to sounds. You can play a little video, or you can just listen to their call. And blue jays say they say Jay, Jay, kind of in this kind of more of a kind of timbery quality to their voice, like ultrasonic in a little bit. So that's our blue jay, and they also like forests, but they're omnivores, so they also are foraging on the ground. You might see them in a wide variety of habitats. Now, going to smaller birds that you might see in your backyard, a famous one is the black Cat Chickadee. Right? So they get its name from having a black cap, has a little black bib, and again, it's found throughout the northern part of the United States. If you go into southern Missouri, it's actually another species that's closely related, the Carolina chickadee, that looks really similar. Here's the Carolina chickadee. You can only tell them apart really by their song. That's kind of an interesting factoid. But they come to my sunflower feeder all the time. They probably come to your feeders too if you have them up. And they like to say their name with their sound. They say chickadee, dee, 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 especially if they're mad or it's their warning call against predators, telling their family members to watch out. If we look at this video, he's singing their song. They say, hey, Petey, or hi, sweetie. Looking all over, huh? So anyways, a lot of interesting videos, sounds, overviews, again, on the All About Birds websites, the black Cat Chickadee. Now, closely related in the same family are Tufted Titmouse. So the Tufted Titmouse has a crest, but its crest is kind of gray, has a little black by its face. It has these pretty rusty flanks, we call them. And again, it's part of the eastern United States. It too likes forests, and it says Peter, Peter, Peter pretty loudly throughout the winter. So let's listen to their song. Peter, Peter, Peter. And these love my sunflower feeder, so sunflower seed feeder. And I'll talk more about bird seeds and how to attract birds at the very end. I want to go through a few more species though. This bird that loves climbing on the tree trunks but is often found upside down is not a woodpecker, but it is a nuthatch. This is our more common nuthatch species, the white-breasted nuthatch. If you're super lucky, you might see its similar species, the red-breasted nuthatch, which are here in winters only in Missouri. But the white-breasted nuthatch is a little larger, again, all white below, a black hat or hat on, black cap on, blue back. And so they really like climbing all over the trees, and they have a funny kind of eerie song that maybe this video will show you. Wow. It looks like it's dark, so this might be filmed at night. Normally during the day they're moving all around, so they're harder to get a good video of. So that's probably why they have that video at night and it's not saying its call. But let's listen to its song because it's kind of fun. You might have heard it. It's kind of nasally, like a wah 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 wah. Hear the nasal quality? Yeah, so that's the white-breasted nuthatch. Now my son's favorite bird is the northern cardinal. So you probably are familiar with them. The males and the females look quite different, where the males are bright red, black around the face, and the females are more brownish, but they both have the crest. Birds can raise and lower their crest, so sometimes they look like they're wide up, sometimes it looks like they're more flat over their back. Here's a good picture. Again, of course, Missouri winters, we might get snow. Doesn't bother the cardinals. All these bird species survive over winter by just sticking out the snow. So they need to eat to get the energy to keep their heart rate up and give them the energy resources to maintain a high body temperature, which is why feeding birds and bird feeders in Missouri, you can get a whole lot of different species. So again, here's the cardinal. Their song, the males like to sing from pretty high up in treetops, and they usually sing birdie, 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 or purdy, purdy, purdy. They usually repeat syllables 3 times before moving on. That's repeated like 6 times. So that's a typical cardinal song. Northern cardinals, the species. Again, a great Missouri bird. Now, here is the American goldfinch. And one thing people might not know about birds is they molt their feathers at least once a year, oftentimes twice a year. So this male, who looks really colorful in the breeding season in spring and summer, will molt these really bright feathers and become really drab and brown looking in the winter time. So people will sometimes have a bird feeder out and get this bird and not think it's American goldfinch because they're not all pretty. But it's the same bird, they just look a little different in the seasons. Now here a male's eating from real thistle feeders. They love thistle, and so if you put them in a bird feeder, you can attract golden finches that way, although they also get my sunflower seeds too. So they have a pretty song like other finches. Let's listen to its kind of warbling variable song. Now sometimes these birds will only start singing in the spring when they're trying to attract a mate and make a territory, and then some birds might be singing more year-round. These are house finches, so the males and the females can look pretty different, where the males are much more colorful with red and the females are more camouflaged. And these are really common in my feeders as well. The males can look in a wide variety of different colors depending actually on their diets. But again, they tend not to be as bright in the winter as in the summer. Now, house finch sounds close to house, but another house bird is the house sparrow. So this is probably the most common bird species in the cities that might come to your bird feeder. They are, males and females look different. The males have this black bib, and the females are more camouflaged. Again, they have this light brown eye stripe though. And they are an invasive species. So we have a lot of native sparrow species in Missouri, but house sparrow is not one of them. They were released into the United States from Europe, and they've since expanded their territory. And sometimes we don't really encourage them nesting in our nest boxes or eating our food, even though it's hard to stop, because they can be really competitive. But some people also just really enjoy watching them because they're a different species. So I want to show you though a native sparrow species to Missouri that I see in my feeders a lot. They oftentimes don't perch on my feeders. They're usually on the ground eating the seeds that drop, are the white-throated sparrows. So they'll have this white and black pattern on their crown, but they'll have this white bib underneath their beak. And so again, they're common. Oh, look, it's eating an insect. Fun. They're common over the winter time. This is more of a breeding plumage with the bright yellow. But they're a great bird to see in your backyard. You can be really happy if you've attracted white-throated sparrows. And then there's a dark-eyed Junko. So these are also really common near my feeder. We have this slate-colored variety. So if you see a bird that's mostly gray with a pinkish bill, that's likely a dark-eyed Junko. They also have white outer tail feathers. This is a young baby. So they'll be hopping around a lot looking for food. And then a last one, and you probably hear this call a lot, I should have put up, is the Carolina wren. This is our most common wren species. Usually, although you can get house wren too, are really common. They have a white eyebrow stripe. They can look really fluffed up in the winter because birds can actually let in more or less air depending on if they need to cool off or warm up. And birds can puff up, like putting on an extra layer of really warm down blankets when they're really cold in the winter mornings. But if we listen to them, you might recognize their song. They're really loud, they sing year-round, and they usually repeat their notes 3 times. So oftentimes these birds say, tea kettle, tea kettle, tea kettle, really loud. So that's the Carolina wren. So how do you identify birds? Where is a good starting point? You are interested maybe in these topics. You want to know more. If you have a smartphone, you can download the Merlin app for free. It too is from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. And you can get a bird pack for birds in the eastern United States. And it really takes you through easy questions to get at what kind of bird it might have been. So it'll use your location to figure out where you were in the world. You can say what size the bird is, between a crow or robin or a small perching bird or a goose, right? What are the 3 main colors, 1 to 3? And then where did you see the bird? On a feeder? Was it swimming? Was it on the ground? And then it'll use that information to give you photos of what the most likely bird species was. So this is a little video on how to use it. Again, download is for free. It's available on iPhones or Androids, so maybe other ones too. But I highly recommend it. I usually tell my students about it. It can be really helpful. Now, attracting birds. I'm a real fan of feeding birds in the wintertime when they might really need that extra nutrients. I do not recommend getting this kind of general wild bird seed with all of this millet in there. Usually the birds don't like the little yellow millet pieces and they all fall to the ground and make a big mess. So I tell people, don't get them, get the sunflower seeds. The sunflower seeds are packed with nutrition. So I get the whole sunflower seeds, black oil sunflower seeds, so they will take the shell off themselves and eat the inside. You can also get them where they're already shelled. Ooh, look at a red-breasted nuthatch. So that's fun. You can get them already shelled if you want, or just sunflower pieces as well. So I recommend that seed. I also really, I was going to show you thistle. So for the goldfinches and stuff, they like the Niger seed is also thistle seed. So again, they sell these at most stores, even Walmart, Target, but then also like Home Depot, Lowe's, Meijer, big stores like that. I also really recommend getting peanuts to feed birds. So I get my peanuts from a Wild Birds Unlimited, which is just in northern Kansas City. You can get a 50-pound bag, which is great, but you can get them usually already shelled, and you put them in this kind of peanut holder, bird feeder, and the birds will come right to it. They love peanuts. They provide a lot of energy, and they especially attracts woodpeckers. So here are downy woodpeckers at a peanut feeder. And the nuthatches love it. So I highly recommend. Some people really want to work on attracting birds, but not squirrels, because squirrels will love your peanut feeder too and your sunflower seed feeder. I just personally have found, and I'm not affiliated, I should say, with Cornell Lab of Ornithology or these company. I just find they really helpful. I recommend them. So there's a Squirrel Buster bird feeder. They're not cheap, I'll tell you that, but they really, really work. So they're spring-loaded, so if something really light like a bird, here's our red-bellied woodpecker, white-breasted nuthatch, and tufted titmouse, if they land on it, even all at the same time, they're light enough that it stays open and they can feed. But if a heavy squirrel tries to jump on, the bird feeder drops lower, and this food that's open is hidden then by the cage, and the squirrels can't get in. They also have suet feeders. Here's the sunflower seed feeder I highly recommend. So it works too on a spring mechanism where something heavy like a squirrel or raccoon won't be able to get in, but the birds are allowed to feed. So those are my recommendations on where to start with birding and identifying birds in your backyard in Missouri winters. I teach ornithology every winter, spring semester at Missouri Western. If you're interested in knowing more, please don't hesitate to contact me. And enjoy Super Science Saturday. Bye-bye.